Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I've got a lot of history in Christchurch. All my family were in New Zealand since 1860, and they all came to the South Island. We've all drifted north, but Mum was born in Christchurch. Her mum, Ruby, had 11 sisters in Christchurch. Can you imagine that? They were constantly fighting. And so that was what I used to visit as a child, coming here on the overnight ferry. You used to remember? There used to be an overnight ferry from Wellington. I was growing up in Wellington, so a lot of history. And Nana lived in Innes Road. I don't know if the house is still there, but... And my dad came to University of Canterbury, engineering, and he was boarding at this house, and he fell in love with the landlady's daughter, my mum. So a lot of Christchurch history here. So what I'm going to talk about today is around being an entrepreneur, being a business person, and I think that's why a lot of you are here, and some of business advice in our story. And story is a very interesting thing, because a lot of people in business, they figured out what their unique selling point is, and they think, wouldn't it be wonderful if all my potential customers could get a piece of paper and on it with even the 5 wonderful things about what I do. Wouldn't that be just perfect? That's what everyone wants to do. The bad news is, if they got that bit of paper, they would completely ignore it. Because what has happened today is we've got too much information in our lives. We've got a sea of information. We're getting 50 times more information than our parents, and they got 50 times more information than their parents. So we're getting 2,500 times more information every day than our grandparents. It's everywhere. It's in your pocket, in your phone. It's everywhere you go that people are trying to throw information at you. And so how, as a business, how do you break through this complete wall? The good news is, what people aren't sick of is stories. People still love stories. So what you have to do is you think about your business, about your proposition, and you think about your own life, and you tell stories from your own life, and in those stories you incorporate aspects of what you want to do in your business. It's got to be you. You've got to be the hero. It can't be a story about someone else. It's got to be you. It's got to be personal, because then people will listen. And it's got to be authentic. You can't make this stuff up. But if you can do that, and we can all do it, we've all got stories, suddenly you've got that audience back. So, here's my first story. 2007, my eldest girl, Ahi Lapalapa, that's a Hawaiian name because Melanie's part Hawaiian, was off to art school, and she'd been there most of the year, and it was the night before Father's Day, the next morning. And at 10 o'clock at night she went, "Oh my God, I didn't get Dad a present." So she did the most remarkable thing. She stayed up most of the night and she made me my own comic book, about this big, hand done, about 20 pages long, all hand illustrated, and so on Father's Day I got this most amazing present. And what the perfect present for me, because I've always been a comic book geek. In 1962 I had the first copy of Spider-Man. Wish I'd kept that. Always loved comics, still like comics. So what an amazing thing to do. Then when I was going to America in 2008, what we decided to do is we photocopied 200 of these. Ahi hand-coloured every one. We hand-sewed the binding, and I had this little book about this big, and on the back I had all my information. It was like the business card from hell. And the way to sell me ecostore in America was through Ecoman, because they like a personality, and they managed to get me heaps of media over there on TV and radio. I've got some to show you later on. And what I'd do, I'd go early and I'd walk up to the person who was going to interview me in the ad break, and I'd give them a little book and say, "Hi, I'm Malcolm from New Zealand, and my daughter made me one, and here's one for you." And I'd walk away again. The next ad break, I'd be watching them, and they'd be looking at it and smiling and nudging each other. And when it came my turn to be interviewed, I was sort of like their best friend. You know, I had this most amazing interviews all the way through America. When I put my book out about 4 years ago, Eco Man, Random House loved these illustrations. They got Ahi to do more of them, but they also got Ahi to work with their animator, and they made the static cartoon book into an animation, and this is it here. I mean, only a daughter. What's she talking about? I don't know what she's talking about. Can't understand that one. So you can see what I thought on that Father's Day. What an incredible thing. In fact, some people have said to me, Ahi's raised the bar pretty high for Father's Day presents there. You know. Pretty hard competition. So that was about where she grew up. And she grew up in a permaculture eco-village that we set up in 1986. So how many people here know what permaculture is? Oh yeah, a couple. For the ones who don't, it's around growing food that we're over managing the whole process, and we should be really following what Mother Nature does and set up systems that grow food all by themselves. So it's a design process. A lot of it's to do with the choice of plants. The way I like to think of it is you're choosing food plants that act like weeds. Like if you've got a weed, you'll find there's different weeds even in different parts of Christchurch. Different weeds flourish, and that's because they like the soil, the amount of sun, the microclimates. You don't have to water a weed or feed it or spray it for bugs because it wants to be there. So if you try and find plants that have those same attributes, classic one we all know probably is like silver beet. You plant the stuff, it's really hard to kill it really. A lot of it is tree crops and animals. Often you'll hear it called a food forest. And then we go back to being hunter-gatherers again. And the fossil records show now we were never healthier or stronger than when we were hunter-gatherers. It's what we're designed to be, and hunter-gatherers are still around. They work 8 hours a week. The rest of the time they have to spend with their family, recreation, spiritual stuff, culture, you know, all that sort of boring stuff. We spend 8 hours a week earning money just to pay for the car to get to work. So we've got something a bit mucked up there. The other side of it is village. People say, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Hippies, communes. Not at all, although we do thank the hippies and the communes for finding out what not to do. There's some really valuable experience there. But if you go back to the old world, as opposed to the new world of New Zealand, Australia, Canada, USA. And you go into the countryside, people don't live in isolated houses, they live in villages. And from your village you walk out to the fields, but you cluster. And so what we did was quite unique, and everyone thought we were crazy, is we had 150 acres, but we clustered all the houses close together just on one part of the farm. And what happens then is if you're living at Mamaki and you walk out your front door, you'll often casually bump into your neighbours, called bump space. And you'll say, oh, and you don't have to do any more than say g'day, there's no obligations. But often you'll start chatting, oh, you're going down the beach, want to take my kids? I'm going to town, can I get something for you? Or even, oh, that's an interesting project, maybe on Friday I could give you a hand with that. And that casual win-win is how the whole village works, because it's so easy to bump into your neighbours. People say, oh, you're going to spend all your time in meetings, aren't you, and this sort of thing. At the moment, we're averaging 5 meetings a year to run the whole project. I think one of the secrets here is that we're not super alternative. We're doing things very normally. I actually think we're just probably a little bit ahead of people, actually. I mean, a lot of the things that we're doing here, you can actually do in the city.
When Malcolm and Mel first started their life here, they had an income of about 20 grand a year, raising 2 girls under the curved roof of an experimental home. It was a comfortable, happy, if modest, family life. But their eco-village experience led to the creation of their ecostore brand and a lucrative multi-million-dollar empire.
Everything we market, I need that, so therefore I can't find it, I'll make sure I make it myself.
This village is not a hippie commune removed from technology and the rest of the world. People here have jobs and families and high-speed broadband. They just care about the impact they have on the land.
Here we have open drainage pits that filter our water, so you see everything that's leaving your house, whereas often when you're in the city you don't think about it. Once you've emptied your dishwater, that wastewater's just gone, you don't think about it again.
It just looks like paradise.
So I couldn't spend all my time spooning around in a lovely eco-village. Boy, you had to have a job. And back in the day, I used to work in the arts and culture. In fact, the reason I went up to Whangarei from Auckland was to work with a group of artists up there, and some of them helped form the village in '86. And we had an amazing life there. We were doing something we later found out it's got a name. It's called voluntary simplicity, which means you're poor, but you're doing it on purpose. And we, whole family, we could live, as I said, for $20,000 a year, which meant just Manly or I could work 20 hours a week, just one of us, and we could survive quite well. And that means our kids, when they're young, they had 1.5 parents home all the time. So my job during these years was working in culture. I've always been fascinated by culture. Particularly what's special about us, particularly us as Pākehās? Why are we different to the rest of the world? Why aren't we exactly the same as Australians? Got the same background, you'd think, let alone the other English speaking people around the world. And one of the big readers of what your culture's like is the celebrations and the festivals you have together. And the biggest festival in humankind has always been the Mid-Winter Festival. And so what do? Middle of summer, we give each other cards with snow on. Makes a lot of good, in a lot of sense. Mucks up when our summer holiday should be. It should be in February, we know that. In Europe, they're in August. And then in the middle of winter, what do? We're miserable. It's really the best time of the year. I mean, the Māori had Matariki. It was so important that the Christians, 300 years after the birth of Christ, changed Christmas from March to December, because that's when all the action was. They said, we can't fight this, let's go to where the action is. And they moved Christmas to be where all the celebration. And even now the pagan stuff's around, the mistletoe, the Yule log, it's still there. So I decided, right, let's get this happening in Whangarei. So I did something to really excite the good burghers of Whangarei. to make them think there's something special, what I did is I trucked in snow from Mount Ruapehu and set up a working ski resort in downtown Whangarei in the winterless north. So in 1992, the first ski slope opened in New Zealand was actually Whangarei, and people were using it. Here's kids from the Koanga Road going down on sleds down the skis. And these kids, they've never seen snow in their life and probably haven't seen it since. And kids in snow, they just go nuts, you know. They see it, they grab it, they'll throw it somewhere straight away. Wonderful thing. And if you know me, that was only the beginning of the story. My idea was to make Whangarei the midwinter festival city of the whole southern hemisphere. Which, funnily enough, that's still open, that position. Still hasn't been done. And get bigger and bigger each year, bring wealth to the poorest part of New Zealand. I mean, it's the poorest part of Northland. And so off I went in year 2, and working really hard. I never got paid to the end because I had to bring all the funding into it. So 6 months into it, still unpaid, working hard on the second one. The Whangarei Community Arts Council, because I needed an official body to run the project officially, even though I was doing all the work, just to channel the money through. But they owned it because they were the official body. They had a big fight at a meeting one night, cancelled the project. I went, ugh. I was just devastated. Like, I'm probably more proud of that than anything I've done since. Like, very conservative town. Twice during that festival, I had people dancing in the street. How often do you get that in New Zealand? I had people dancing in the streets. And so, oh my God. Off I went back to the eco village. You know, it wasn't Melanie was working at the local school, and so I was just there with the kids, thinking, there's got to be a different way. Because during that time, something had happened, something magical. The first awakening of my superpowers had happened there. Because I, believe it or not, I used to be lots of good ideas, but I was pretty unconfident and pretty shy guy. But all these things had started happening. For example, the guy who invented the snow machine happened to be living in the Bay of Islands. He came down one day during the festival and we made snow in Whangarei one morning. Another thing that happened was I was working with the retailers, of course, to get money out of those buggers, and I gave them their best season ever. The shops tills were just ringing. And they gave me a list of 40 retailers in the town who had never joined anything before. You know, the usual reason, they're either too mean, or they're, oh, I won't join stuff, you know, that sort of people. And they said, Malcolm, here's the list, you might be able to get some more money for your festival. And I was fired up by this time, 2 weeks before, I was bowling into these places. Everyone was saying yes. And next day, my brother-in-law would go along to these people with this cut-out snowman to put in the window. These people didn't have a clue what they'd bought. Just something about my energy. Okay, I'm in. And I thought, God, how do I ever get back there again? You know, what an amazing thing. So, 12 months, really going deep into who I was, what my values and ethics were, what made me go, what made me stop, what I knew about the world, what I knew would be the future of the world, how I could stuff up not-for-profits because they're terrible, how I could stuff up business because back then that was terrible. But in '93, I believe, when I started, the main thing about business was Gordon Gekko and greed is good. Do you remember those days? That was, you know, you had to be a bit of an arsehole in a business, otherwise you wouldn't be successful. That was what people really thought. And I thought, we've got to stuff all this up, don't we? So after 12 months deep into it, I came up with this mind map. I love mind maps. And it's still working today. This is the secret plan, not so secret, for ecostore. And it was probably the world's first social enterprise, because at that stage I didn't know of anyone else doing. People were putting out lovely businesses, but they weren't doing it for a cause. They were doing it just because it was lovely products. But ecostore was set up right from the beginning as a new way to fundraise for a not-for-profit. It was to get over my fundraising roles, because not-for-profits have two terrible problems. All the small ones spend 80% of time trying to raise money for their own salaries. And if you've ever worked in not-for-profits, you'll know that's true. How disheartening is that? And then the other problem they have is that the committees that run them are all the city's do-gooders who can't say no, come on, be on my committee. Oh, okay. And they end up on about 20 committees. They don't even read the minutes until they get there. And that's your strategic leader, that's your boss, that's the person who's meant to look after you. There's people who don't even want to be in the room. And that's right across the board. So I wanted to stuff that up as well. And so the main thing here is, on one side you had a business that had to be completely embedded in ethics very, very deeply, and had to give products which really were needed. Because what I knew about myself, if I had anything to hide, I was very unmotivated. A terrible salesman for things I don't believe in, fantastic salesman for things I believe in. So therefore it had to be just for myself. I couldn't do it otherwise, so that's why ecostore had to have strong ethics. And then at arm's length, a completely different organisation, the Fairground Foundation. Why that's important is a lot of people muck this up. A lot of people, they're running not-for-profits and say, well, let's set up a little business on the side to make money. Always fails. Always fails. And the reason is that the sort of people who are running not-for-profits and their culture is warm and slow and inclusive and collaborative. That's not how you run a business. And on the other side, you have a business, and the people in the business want results straight away. They'll worry about things at Saturday night. They gamble all the time, put everything on the line, which you won't do in a not-for-profit. And when they try and do not-for-profit things, again, they're useless at that. So the idea is you have two completely organisations, but there's a tie in the middle. Obviously, a business can give funding and expertise to the not-for-profit and letting their staff spend time there. But it's actually a two-way street, because if, as CEO of ecostore, I'd go along to the editor and say, boy, have I got a good story for you. And they'd say, Malcolm, actually the advertising department is down the hallway. But if you go in there as a not-for-profit, they'll run your story. They'll love it. And every time a good story is run by Fairground, then ecostore gets a little tick. So, ecostore. Why ecostore? Well, I'd already been living for 8 years in an eco-village. I kind of knew the products to live a circular economy life, because permaculture is definitely about circular economy. In fact, our first laundry liquid I made was designed so that once your washing machine went into the spin cycle and pumped the water out of it, it could go into a hose, and that could run a sprinkler on your organic garden. So suddenly, instead of being a waste product to the city, you're using it as an organic fertiliser. Circular economy. So I'd had experience. I knew the sort of stuff I needed for my life, and I thought, well, if we are living this way, maybe the rest of the world will want to live that way one day too. So when we started in '93, everyone thought I was a nutter. And I probably was a nutter. But we set up mail order only. That means I could still live with my $20,000 a year overhead. And reached the whole of New Zealand. And within weeks, we had customers even in Christchurch. Could cover the whole of New Zealand. After a few years, we got too big. We moved to the Big Smoke, as Archie said in her thing. Set up in Freeman's Bay on the edge of Auckland City, of the actual city part. And it was just had to be a mail order warehouse with a little shop, and that shop suddenly took off. Then in the early 2000s, we knew to really make a difference, we had to go to where the people are. Because you don't, I don't know how we started. Initially, as this stupid business plan, selling dishwashing liquid by mail. I mean, how dumb is that? I mean, you can buy it for $1.99, 1 litre. Why do you want to send off to some bloody crazy hippie up north to buy your dishwashing liquid? You know, it had to be that. We had to get away from that. So we knew we had to get into the supermarkets. And believe it or not, I hadn't been down a cleaner aisle by that stage for probably over 10 years, because why would I go down that aisle, you know? It's not your favourite aisle, isn't it? But you don't go, yippee, the cleaner aisle, I've been looking forward to this. So I turned left, walked down the cleaner aisle, and I went, oh my God. Talk about loud. Everyone screams at you in that, right? You know, the bright colours, the big brands, the sort of, oh man. And I thought, okay, game on, let's have a crack at this. So we did exactly what you thought you did. We made up all these trial labels, whacked them on bottles and placed them in the supermarket, because luckily we had one just across the road from us. Invisible. You couldn't play that game. And so invisible that we actually lost one. Never knew what happened to it. We couldn't find it again. So that's when Melanie, bless her heart, who is an artist, said, let's go anti-marketing. Let's go something that no one's ever tried before. Let's go quiet. And that's when we came up with the idea of black and white photographs, muted colours. Incredibly brave thing to do. Because initially, you couldn't see us. But we were this quiet little calm oasis in this noisy, noisy world. And once you got your eye in, you can spot an ecostore product right throughout the supermarket, because no one else is doing it. No one else has been brave enough to do that, to actually go quiet in that noisy world. And people are looking for the alternative, but it's got to work as well. It's got to be the same price. It's got to be easy to obtain, and it can't look too wild or hippie. I tell you now, no one wants to buy expensive dishwashing liquid. I'll tell you now, no one wants to do that. So how are we going? Well, the reason I did have a business right from the word go is the big multinationals have always played the game on your the worst side of you. You want something big and you want it cheap. So they've always packed it full of fillers or watered it down. When we started, a 1 kg of laundry only had, believe it or not, 4 washers. We had 32. Because back in the day, you used to use a cup. That's it, use a cup. And that's a cup is 250 mils. So they're only saying. And so, and even today, after they've said they've actually made it more concentrated, well, they haven't, they've just made it less watered down. Even now, they're only up to 23 washers. And in our front loader, we've actually got 64 washers in 1 kg. So Consumer Magazine said the cheapest wash for your clothes in New Zealand is ecostore front loader. We smash them all, even those own brand, nasty brands, we smash them. Canister, Independent Blue comes out with these studies. Again and again, ecostore comes out, not just the most environmental, but the best overall satisfaction. Same for the dishwasher as well. But this is the big one. We're back in the eco village under the house. Melanie and I packing things into boxes, sending them around New Zealand. We start getting phone calls and letters. Anyone here remember letters? We used to get letters saying the same thing. Since using your product, I don't sneeze anymore when I do the housework. I used to have this amazing rash, it's gone. My eczema disappeared. Even my asthma's getting better. We went, what? Because we had started from pretty much eco things, you know, save the whales and the waterways and stuff. That's what, but we clicked onto that really quickly. And so right from the beginning, our main, we say, got to work, yes. Got to be the same price, yes. Got to be eco, yes. That's just benchmark for us. What our point of difference is we refuse to poison you, believe it or not. We're paranoid about what chemicals end up on your skin, your biggest organ. And because of that, we actually reject 50% of the green tick plant-based eco-chemicals we will not use. Because just because something's natural doesn't mean it's safe. Snake venom is natural. Arsenic is natural. There's lots of nasties out in nature. So a lot of people think, oh, it's natural. No. So that's our main thing. So 50% of the green chemicals we will not even use. We use what's called the precautionary principles. And every chemical we had, you can go on our website and it will take it back to international independent people who judge the healthiness of every, and you can check third party, everything we use. We're completely open to that.
It's an issue that's not limited to industry. The same dangers lurk in our homes and offices. Malcolm Rands has campaigned against EDCs for 20 years. His products are deliberately made without them. But the chemicals are found in many other everyday items, from toys and food containers to cosmetics and cleaning products.
First was the tobacco industry, then there was big processed food, and now household chemicals. You know, it's improving. I can see in the future these chemicals would have disappeared, and people would have thought, why on earth were we covering our bodies in petrochemicals?
Nearly 800 chemicals are believed to interfere with our endocrine or hormonal system. A report for the United Nations and World Health Organization says another 145,000 chemicals are still untested. As their use has grown, there's been a surge in endocrine-related disorders, including testicular and breast cancer. Asthma in children has more than doubled in 20 years, and there's been a dramatic worldwide drop in fertility rates, with up to 40% of men now having low sperm counts. The report's authors say it's a global threat, and more research is vital to confirm the link between the EDCs and the health disorders.
So that's your endocrine system. There's also your immune system, which these chemicals attack, you know, your asthmas and your eczemas. And then a lot of them are just irritating, just completely irritating, you know, that actually, the classic one here, sodium lauryl sulfate, is a classic one. It's plant-based, so everyone says, oh, we'll use that, nice. It's so irritating that chemists use it on skin tests to see how irritating something can be, because nothing's more irritating than that. It's so irritating, it's been used as shark repellent. Just a few drops in the water will make all fish fly away, and it's used regularly to clean factory floors. It's so aggressive. And you go back and have a look at your products, if they're not ecostore at home, I bet you'll find they're all based on sodium lauryl sulfate, because it's plant-based. And another one I got a little clip about, really interesting, is that there's all these little things we've been manufactured by the soap industry to believe in, and one of them is foaming. You know, if it's not foaming, it's not cleaning very well. You know, if the dishwasher doesn't foam, it's not working. Or if your hair is not foaming, well, it's not working, right? No, foaming is just something that chemists could control, so they've made it something to look out for. An attribute of your product is how well it foams. It's nothing to do with cleaning. So this next chemical is another plant-based chemical. It's not even to make things foam that well. It's actually, once things are foaming, it's to make sure the bubbles don't pop too soon. That's the only reason you put this in, so that the foam lasts. That's the only reason you use it.
Cocamide DEA is used to make products foam, but the state of California's officially listed it as a chemical known to cause cancer in animals. Michael Green from the CEH said, most people believe that products sold in major stores are tested for safety, but consumers need to know that they could be doused with a cancer-causing chemical every time they shower or shampoo.
It is now banned in parts of the world, and I cannot see why it shouldn't be banned here. Yep, no one's looking after you, sorry. The government's looking after you. The supermarkets are. Yeah, it's a wild world. It's a wild world out there. But I'm not negative. We can actually live now as healthy as we've ever lived, if not healthier, because we're rich. And there's only a few things you've got to do. Obviously, no nasty chemicals, and that's not just in ecostore products. There's other chemicals in your furnishing. And how many people here have non-stick fry pans using Teflon? Chuck them out. Teflon, there's no safe limit for Teflon. Tiny bits are just, it's one of the nastiest things. You'll find more and more people are getting rid of Teflon. It's going to be a scandal one day. You watch it. You heard it here first. So go for a good old iron one, or you can get new non-stick ones which are made with ceramics, but those old Teflon ones are shockers. Good water. You guys are just getting your water changed here, I hear. And I know why people put chlorine in, and I can't, you know, say fair enough, you want to keep the bugs out of the pipes, but what you now have to do is you have to get a water filter. Because you don't want the chlorine in your body. Chlorine is there to kill microorganisms. The human body is 80% microorganisms, and particularly in your gut. It's got all these microorganisms that we've grown up for our whole life, and now we've found out a good gut means a good brain. The connection is just, you know, you would have read the research, incredible. And every time you drink chlorine, it goes in down there and it kills off all your beautiful microflora. Easy to get rid of. One of those filters, you know, just a couple $100. It's not a huge expense in your life. Much better than buying water, that's for sure. And so good water, good food, of course. The best one of all is grow your own food organically. Cut it just before you eat it, so it hasn't started to oxidize, and it's just like a health explosion. You just cannot get anything better from you than good, freshly picked food. It's amazing. Exercise, we all know about exercise, and you do have to exercise. I'm running this thing called The World is the Gym. Every time you come to some stairs or you have to carry a bag, you say, yes, it's great, here's some stairs, how fantastic. I don't have to pay to go to the Stairmaster at the gym, I can just do it right here. So all those, we've got too much of a convenience world. We're so convenient that we're taking away all the things that, you know, like our ancestors exercised all the time just in their daily life. So any little things like that, you say, yippee, I can walk, I can cycle, I can go up those stairs, bugger that escalator. You've just got to change your brain. There's lots of ways you can exercise without having to go to the gym or do those massive runs. You can do it all through your life. And the other one is, you guys are stressing too much. Chill out. Chill out. It's the worst thing you're doing, is stressing. It's really, really bad for you. And there's lots of things you can do, like around here, just go for a walk in the trees. It's been proven scientifically, they call it tree bathing in Japan, that being in nature actually sucks stress out of you. Get into little mini meditations. A meditation is not some big scary thing. All we've got to do is just, for a little while, just breathe into your tummy, and then breathe out again, concentrate on that. I've just meditated. The more I do it, the more I've meditated. Oh, that was a mini meditation. It's an incredibly simple thing to do. You don't have to be any big deal. So where we're at now, ecostore, we're in every supermarket in New Zealand, right down to 4 squares. We're in over 1,000 supermarkets in Australia and a similar number of other stores. We're going gangbusters in Korea. We've just set up a new company in Japan, a joint venture with a Japanese billionaire called Ecostore Japan. And I think on Singles Day, which is the 11th of the 11th, one day they do this big sale. Last year, in one day, we did $2 million in one day in China on Singles Day, all online. So it's going for it. It's really going for it. Oh yeah, this next thing I'm going to do is some of the videos of me in the United States. Watch out, second guy. I was on Fox International, so this was being all around the world, this was beamed, and I'll tell you a funny story after you've seen it.
But if you've now got an ecostore product in your life, you know the effect it's got on, particularly on the health of your family, and that is our key difference with ecostore.
Now it's not just, as I said, it's not just a cool thing to do. The bigger companies are your competitors, aren't they?
That's right. In our industry, authenticity is huge.
The Fox 2E team is working to help you go green, and you can still be environmentally conscious while cleaning your home at the same time. Joining me this morning, Malcolm Rands, founder of the ecostore Brands product. Malcolm, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now, I should call you Eco Man, right?
Indeed.
In his home of New Zealand, he's really known as Eco Man. Does Eco Man do you have the green cape and all that you wear on TV in New Zealand?
I couldn't fit it in my bag, so I had to leave it at home this time. Yeah.
All right.
Now this is not Photoshop. Times Square, New York City. How many Australasian brands have done that? Not many, if any. And we didn't pay for it. Trump says he's not going to pay for a wall. Well, we didn't pay in his hometown for Times Square. We didn't pay for it. So the story is, so the big break, we're going to be on international TV of Fox, half-an-hour interview, looking at the green revolution in industry. So we turn up there and they say, oh, we changed our minds. You got 4 minutes. Okay. And they had that young guy, so a really young little upstart little Fox bugger. And he gets in there and he does all the talking. I hardly got a word in, and it was all sort of negative, sort of snarky stuff, right? And right at the end, just to top it off, he said to me, oh, Malcolm, you do cleaning products, don't you? Do you want to clean my desk before you leave? And I looked at him and said, because he's a young guy, I said, why does your mother usually do it for you? And I walked out, right? And I went into the green room. The whole green room was an outrage, because Americans never do that sort of stuff, hey? They're very respectful of that sort of stuff. Oh, you're not going to say that to a bloody Kiwi, we'll give you shit. You know? So I embarrassed him on international TV that day. So we've got a baby range, very important to us, because the one time a human is likely to change is a woman who's found out she's pregnant for the first time. Not so much the second time, but the first time she can change overnight from nightclub girl to research bunny. You know I'm right. And we want to be there when the research is being done. Household cleaners, as I said, same price, same effectiveness, but with eco and health as well. And with the personal care range, they can seem slightly more expensive, but all the competition is just rubbish, all based on sodium lauryl sulfate. Like, it's all like drain cleaner quality, really. We were the first one to bring really high level stuff that you'd only ever find in a department store or specialists into the mainstream. Like, I've seen our hand wash, exactly the same formulation, in a high-end store for $25, exactly the same stuff. You can buy that at the local Pack and Save for $4.99. So it is incredibly cheap for what you're getting. I mean, you can buy the sodium lauryl sulfate rubbish for $2.99, but it's just like you've jumped up about 10 steps. And this is our latest thing we've done. Yeah, so whoever would have thought plastic would help change climate change? In fact, it always used to be the big bugbear. People would say, oh, you got all these lovely eco stuff, but they're all in plastic. And I used to say, you're right, no alternative. But now we have got the one. And the funny thing is, this technology has been around for a while, and they offered it to all the big companies, but those big companies are also run by accountants and bottom line that they wouldn't take the little extra margin. They just wouldn't do it. But we did. We just said, bugger it, you know. It's actually costing ecostore probably over $1 million a year to go down this track, but we think it's worth it. We really do. And we're doing all these different technologies now to actually claw back that $1 million, which has given us a challenge, but it's just the right thing to do. So, soap, you know, I've been talking a lot about soap, and that was ecostore's a soap thing. Another thing you know is something called the soapbox, where people get up and tell you what to do. Well, I don't believe in telling what people what to do. I believe that you do it by example, and then people follow your lead. And that's what Fairground's all about, is looking at horrible problems on the world and saying, wow, maybe we could make a new social enterprise and give people jobs out of these problems. So we've got two problems we're looking at. The Fairground Foundation has been around for ages, so this is the history first, and that is, this photograph is interesting because the Fairground Foundation has always been our sister organisation, even though I didn't have time to do much with it until now. We always would niggle around, and this is from 1992. I only had 6 people in my organisation. I gave Tonya a day off on full pay every week to start putting organic gardens into the local schools, and I helped her as well. This is the headmaster of Ponsonby Intermediate. That's the organic garden behind him. He's in his hand, he's got a sledgehammer, and at his feet you can see he's smashing up the concrete in the schoolyard to make more room for organic garden. And the 2 projects now I'm full-time in the foundation. I've got 2 projects on the boil. One is called Bucket, and it's a new way to help save the bird life and the bush in New Zealand. It's a new way of crowdfunding which overcomes the difficulties. At the moment you can crowdfund using Give a Little and Pledge Me and things like that. Basically, you've got to be a brilliant person at organising the whole hoo-ha around raising the money. No one goes to Give a Little and says, who will I back today? It's just a machine to collect the money. And the people who get all the money is like the 10-year-old blonde girl with a rare disease. She'll get it, but most people, they haven't got the experience to run the campaign. It doesn't work for them. So I wanted to overcome that for the tens of thousands of Kiwis who are out there trapping possums and stoats, replanting riverbanks, doing amazing work. They're really good at what they do. They love doing it, and they're useless fundraisers. So it's a new thing called Bucket. We're 2 years down the track and we're getting really close, and so close that we're running our first trial in a few weeks. So I'm actually looking at volunteers who'd be willing to go on our first trial. It'll cost you $20 a month to be part of it. But we just want to test the software before we release it to, so if anyone's interested in helping us out for $20 a month for a couple of months, then let me know and I'll take your name. That'd be really cool, because we actually get into that stage where we're just about to do the trials. And the other one is called Bump Space. You might have heard me mention that before. And it's all about, so when it's getting, the news is coming out, people didn't know this for years, but it's coming out now. Now the biggest health complaint on the planet, is it smoking? Is it drinking? Is it obesity? They're all up there. There's one that beats them all. And the biggest health problem on the planet is loneliness. It's a killer. At all ages, it's a real killer. It leads to early death, to heart problems, to addictions, to all sorts of things, because we've lost our village. It's a massive problem that people, and it's all ages. It's not just people, old people in the homes that you think about. It's on all different ages. People are incredibly lonely because we've lost our village. So the idea of Bump Space is that Fairground is becoming a property developer. The first one will be in Auckland. Christchurch is definitely on the map for one of these. And we'll, of course, eco, of course, high quality, of course, just as affordable, of course. But it's going to be very hard to live in this medium density, which is 3-story walk-ups. And you're saying, oh, what's that? Isn't that? Well, Italy is all 3-story walk-ups. It's a beautiful way to live. And because you've reduced the spread of the suburban house, you've got all that land that you can give back to share commons. And it's going to be very hard to live into this place without always bumping into your neighbours, just in everyday life. And all you've got to do is say g'day. After a while, you get to know their name. Before you know it, you're looking after their budgie while they go on holiday. And suddenly you'll be living in a neighbourhood where you feel you belong. And there'll be 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, all there, so you can have, you know, grandparents can be there, and the family can be there, and the single person, you know, they can all be in the same community. Up to 50 houses in each. We're building one. We'll sell out. We'll have a waiting list for the next one. But most of all, will make really good money doing this. And why is that important? Because we want every other property developer in New Zealand to copy us. We wanted to say, well, if that idiot Rands can do it, when do I have a crack at this? I'll make even more money. And if we're a business, we'd be keeping all our intellectual property to ourselves, so we had an advantage. But seeing we're a foundation, we'll say, you want to copy us? Here you go. Here's our IP. Here's our supply chain. Here's all the mistakes we made. And we're using success in business to help create the world we want to live in. So, I've often been the person that sit round in the bath in particular. We moved into our last house in Auckland because the house before didn't have a bath in it, and I realised I wasn't thinking well anymore, so I bought a bath. We changed house just to have a bath. And I love to think of 20 years' time and think, what would a perfect world for my children, my grandchildren look like in 20 years' time? And once I can visualise it, I say, hey, let's do that now. Thank you very much.